Namaste. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandamadvaita purnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahmarupam ganesham bhajema. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all to the 27th session of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. We have completed the 4th chapter in detail with pictorial description of each verse. So, we did Shravanam in detail. Today, we will have an overall recap of the entire chapter, of the salient features of the chapter that will enable Mananam to all of us. We are starting the auspicious month of Shravana from now, or Savan in North India. It starts so in South India from today. Traditionally, each day of the month is a day to celebrate many festivals like the Bhimeshwara Vrata, Naga Panchami, which is much like the Bhai Dooj for the South people, Varamahalakshmi, Upakarma, Raksha Bandhana, Krishna Janmashtami, just to name a few. Mondays are auspicious as Shiva is specially worshipped. He is supposed to have become Neelakantha. He drank halahala this month and therefore he is appeased this month specially. Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, name each day and it is auspicious in its own way. So spreading that Mangalatva, that Shubham everywhere, let's begin the recap of this particular chapter and continue our study of Bhagavad Gita. Senior students of Team Param Vedanta, Dr. Anupama, Dr. Netra, Dr. Rupa, Shri Ullas, Srimati Mamata and Srimati Chaitana will give us the summary today. Shri Madhusudan will do the chanting of the Pratasmarami verses again today. So with this, I request Dr. Hegde to please take over and give us the introduction to today's class. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ahalya. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. As introduced by Dr. Ahalya, today we will go through the entire chapter. We will have a summary of 6 important topics. What is the greatness of the Bhagavad Gita and the Avatara Rahasya? To understand the nature of God, which is similar as self-realization. What is the crux, the tatparya, the essence of not only the 4th chapter, but the entire Gita? What is Jnana Karma Sanyasa? Krishna introduces 12 sadhanas in the form of various yagnas. What is the benefit of Jnanam? And finally, Krishna gives a very straight message. What are the do's and don'ts to be done? As the essence of this chapter is Jnana Karma Sanyasa, which is a form of facilitating, allowing things to happen. Let us learn from nature how nature's intelligence functions. Nature functions with effortless ease. You do not see a struggle in any natural activity. That is why it is called natural, or in Sanskrit it is called sahaj. Grass grows, fish swim, birds fly, flowers bloom, the earth spins, the sun shines. In all these activities, you don't see an effort at all. Can we learn from nature and can we be in harmony with nature? And what is to learn is how I can put in less effort. So the catchphrase will be do less, accomplish more. Let us see where we lose a lot of effort. We lose a lot of effort when we work for acceptance, we work for appreciation. You will see wherever the ego is, the ego wants to be a somebody. The ego is afraid of being a nobody. Teachers tell us, can you accept yourself this moment as it is. And if we have learned about prarabdha, whatever happens this moment, I'm totally responsible for it. And therefore, all the good and bad, if I can take a level of responsibility, then there is no struggle with this moment. One of the role model teachers of inaction in action is Bhagavan Ramana, who was also an embodiment of silence and in whose presence magical things would happen, just like in the presence of Sri Dakshinamurti. All the seekers would come, but when they come, they would keep their mind away. They would just come like in the presence of the higher self, they would identify their higher self. So it was always silence. And even if somebody spoke, his message would be, Chumma, just be. His word that he would say, just be. You don't have to do anything, just be. There was a story, it so happened once parents came with a little girl, and this girl was a little hyperactive. And the parents could not control the girl. And as everybody was still, Bhagavan was still, but this girl was running around here and there. She could not keep still for a moment. Bhagavan watched for some time and asked her, "What are you doing?" in Tamil. And promptly she replied, "Chumma irukkren. I'm not doing anything." And Bhagavan remarked that this is how exactly a jnani is. A jnani may be doing so many things, but in his own understanding, he is not doing anything because he is anchored into inaction in action. Bhagavan has put this in a nice verse in Upadesha Sara, which goes like this: Tritstale manaha swastatha kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nischitam, which means Hrit. Hrit means the heart. Here it also means where the Atma resides. Right now, just see where is your mind. My mind is everywhere. My mind is in the object of all the things that are happening. All the world around my mind is there. Bhagavan says, can you bring your mind to that consciousness because of which you are aware of everything? And then he says, Kriya means Karma Yoga, Bhakti means Upasana Yoga, Yoga here means Ashtanga Yoga, Bodha means Jnana Yoga. The objective of all the four sadhanas is to help us to bring the mind and anchor in the heart. With this background, let us listen to these 6 speakers who have spent a good part of the last 1 month to prepare to present that part of the 4th chapter. And let us be as sensitive, like Bhagavan says, anchoring in the Sakshi Bhava. As we listen, the opening speaker speaking about Guru Sthiti and Avatara Rahasya will be Dr. Netra. Over to you, Dr. Netra.
Namaste, Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The 2nd chapter covered both Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. The verses 2.11 to 2.30 formed the Jnana Yoga section, which has been elaborated in 4th and 5th chapters. No one can escape karma. Krishna wants to teach that to Arjuna, how to be involved in action, but at the same time, not to be affected by action. Insulating the mind by Jnanam. Applying the Jnanam Bham, insulate yourself and enter into karma. Then not only karma will not disturb you, it will appear as a game or sport. In the next slide, the 4th chapter is called Jnana Karma Sanyasa, that is, renunciation of action through knowledge. The first 8 verses are actually diversions from Jnana Yoga, which discusses 2 aspects: Gita Stuti, greatness of Gita, and Avatara Rahasya. In the next slide, Krishna describes Gita to be of beginningless Vedic teaching given by God to rishis, a Paurashaya Shastram that contains the teachings for humanity. It has come through Guru Shishya Parampara. In this verse, there is also description about 2 types of karma sannyasa. Vividisha sannyasa, that is external renunciation, vidvat sannyasa, renunciation through wisdom, or a shift to binary format. In the next slide, Krishna emphasizes the greatness of the Gita by telling that it has been milked from Upanishadic cows. Then the Lord gave Veda, and now Krishna has given us Gita. This spiritual teaching has gone through Guru Shishya Paramparas, families of kings, sages, Kshatriya, and Brahmana. Krishna says that he gave this wisdom to Surya Bhagavan, Vivaswan, the head of solar clan, Surya Vamsha, which was eventually propagated to his son Vaivasvata Manu. Manu taught his son Ikshvaku and subsequently future generations. In the next slide, the spiritual teaching is compared with the Ganga as both purify us. Both have come from the Lord. Ganga comes from the Lord's head. Jnanam also comes from the Lord. And with passage of time, the teaching has weakened and Krishna had to revive this teaching. In the next slide, Krishna says that as he brought this teaching to this universe, it is his duty to preserve it. And he chose Arjuna as a representative of humanity. So why did Krishna choose Arjuna? Because Arjuna asked for it. If we remember the verse 2.7, a qualified student Arjuna not just had Shraddha, Bhakti on Krishna, but also was like a friend. So this knowledge which has been given is Etat Uttamam Rahasyam, the greatest secret in the world. Why? Because what we are searching for in life happens to be within ourselves. This knowledge can be misunderstood. We can recite all this Upanishad, Gita, but it may not be understood by many. Hence it is Uttamam Rahasya. In the next slide, Arjuna is puzzled by the apparent incongruity of events in Sri Krishna's statement. He knows that Krishna's birth was aparam, recent, and Surya Bhagavan was param, much before, million years ago. So how can Krishna teach both? How to reconcile the two statements was Arjuna's doubt, and as an answer to this, Krishna introduces the topic of avatara from verses 5 to 8. And it is only in this section in Bhagavad Gita that the avatara topic is dealt with. The next slide discusses how is avatara different from jiva. Avatara is Lord's creation, incarnation, while jiva is human birth, fall. There are three main differences between jiva and avatara. Karana Beda, cause, Swarupa Beda, nature, Uddesha Beda, purpose. Jiva is born to exhaust the punya, papa due to its ego, ahankara, and is a sansari, while Ishvara is punya papa atitaha with the purpose of dharma samstapana, loka sangraha. Krishna is Sarvagnaha and he knows the past and future, while Jiva is Alpagnya and does not know the past nor the future. The next slide, Krishna discusses the nature of Avatara. Birthless, not subject to decay, death, and the Lord has not helplessly come, but he has chosen to come to this world. How? Prakrutim Swam Adhishtaya. By keeping the Prakruti material body under his control, he takes up the body with help of Maya Tattvam by producing Mayika Shariram without the five Bhautika elements. So when does he take birth? Krishna explains in the next slide in the 7th verse. Whenever Dharma declines and Adharma increases, he creates himself. This famous verse also comes in Vishnu Sahasranama. Just like how our body has an intrinsic immune system for protection, the universe cosmic system is the Bhagavan's Shariram that has avatara as natural immunity and becomes active whenever there is disturbance. How Lord protects Dharma is discussed in the next slide in the 8th verse. Two ways are there. One is A Kshatriya promotes dharmic people and destroys adharmic people, while a Brahmana promotes dharma by teaching. And Lord Krishna has done both. So, in conclusion, in the next slide, these verses, Sri Krishna establishes the credibility and importance of the spiritual wisdom he has bestowed on Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita continues to astound people with its perennial wisdom that remains relevant to our daily lives even now. Lord Krishna's avatara or incarnation is to protect the virtuous, destroy the wicked, re-establish dharma, and this is Yuge Yuge, millennium to millennium. Thank you.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So we saw that in the beginning of 4th chapter, Krishna took an important diversion and make us understand what is the importance of this knowledge and the great secret about the avatara. Now he comes back to the central topic, the mukhya part of the entire Grantha of all Vedanta, in fact, that how do you attain this liberation? He says, Yo Vetti Tattvataha. Once you know my true nature, once you know the true nature of God, then you will be liberated. There is a little bit of a contradiction, actually a seeming contradiction, not a real one, because in the 2nd chapter he said, once you realize the self, you will be liberated. Now here he says, once you realize the God, you will be liberated. So which one do I have to do? Well, we need to just understand the subtle difference there, that realizing the self is as if the wave is realizing that I am nothing but water. My essential nature is water. And realizing God is knowing that the wave says that the ocean is nothing but water. The essential nature of wave and ocean are nothing but water. So whether you know self or you know God, both are the same. You cannot know one without knowing the other. And they are both the same. So knowing any one of these, which are the same things, you would be liberated. So he says that know this real nature of me, not just the nature of the body, because Krishna's body is also going to perform exactly like our bodies. It is also perishable. But the very nature is the consciousness behind. That principle is same. So that true nature, once you know, then there is no fear of birth and death. Because once the wave realizes that I'm actually water, then there is no rise and fall of a wave. It is just water. Those are just different expressions and manifestations. In the next slide, we see that he tells us about what are the different stages to achieve him. How mam upashrita, how many people, bahavo, many people have achieved this, not just you. He says there are different stages. First, you should start with Ekarupa Ishvara. You just have your devotion for Rama or Krishna or Devi. And then from there, you graduate into Vishwarupa Ishvara, in which you see Lord in everything around us. And then Arupa Ishvara, the Nirguna Nirakar Ishvara. And the stages to reach there, how do we do our sadhanas is, first we make the land fertile and then we sow the seed. So the fertiling of land is preparing our mind, removing all the impurities, the mala nivritti, vikshepa nivritti from that, which is done by karma yoga and upasana yoga. What happens by that is that I reduce or eliminate my raga and dvesha. Because of the strong likes, the strong raga, I develop bhaya. If I get something and then what happens if it loses? Or if I don't get it, then krodha creeps in. So all these are manifested once raga and dvesha are there, and the karma yoga is then used to actually get rid of those. But just fertile land is not enough. It is important, it is needed, but that is not enough. You still need to sow the seed of knowledge in it. With the prepared mind, you could actually do that. You would need to remove the self-ignorance. God plus impurity is what I am. So if I remove that impurity, that covering of ignorance on top of that, then I obviously realize God. I become God. So he says, Bahavo mad bhavam agataha. Many people have achieved this. So obviously we all can also achieve that. In the next slide, we see, he says that there are multiple things that people can actually ask for. The beauty of it is, I don't force on them. Even though the primary and paramount goal is spirituality, to attain liberation, But if somebody wants to achieve some material goals, I'm okay with that. I would give you whatever you ask for. So let us be very sure what we really ask for, what we have that strong desire for, because we are going to get exactly that. We are free to choose. But generally, what he says is that people tend to choose karma because you can actually see its results are tangible. It is rather easy to do. There's a lot of things to do, but it is easier to do. On the other hand, the Jnana Yoga is difficult because its preparation is very, very hard. The sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, the accumulation of that is not easy. It is just like if you see Olympics, the preparation is 4 years or even maybe longer, but the main event is only maybe a 1 minute routine. So for 1 minute, just that tattvam asi, you need to be ready with so much of preparation for that seed to actually grow. So many people find that difficult, even though the results of karma are finite and they have the bonded results. The incompleteness is there. There is a dukkha mishrit tattvam is there. All those aspects of badness in their results are there. It's finite, but still those infinite results are rather elusive because of the preparation needed for that. So in the next slide, we see that he says, then how should we do our actions to achieve that? He takes the responsibility on himself and says that I have created different varna ashramas. There are different varna and ashramas that I have created, like brahmacharya ashrama, grihastha ashrama, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. On the other hand, he has also created different varnas based on, there are different ways in which the society can be classified. He mainly says should be based on guna. What is guna? Brahmana is the one who has the sattva dominance in his nature. Kshatriyas are the ones who have rajasic dominance with a little bit of sattva. And then Vaishyas are the ones which has rajasic dominance with a little bit of a tamasa. And then the Shudra are the last ones. These are based on the guna, not jati, not by birth. Now in this order, the former is higher than the latter ones, the following ones. So all sadhanas that we have to do is go from the tamasic to a little bit rajasic, from selfish to selfless rajasic, and to sattvic. This is how we need to move ahead. And we should do this. He says, I also do all these karmas, but I keep detached from these actions. And because I'm detached from the actions, I'm detached from the results also. And that is the way it has to be done. That is how you climb this ladder. In the next slide, we see that he says that this is how your forefathers have already known. See, many times Arjuna has faced this challenge that, okay, this duty is not so happy, so I have this problem, so let me just run away from actions. Let me just go and take sannyasa. But he says that is not the way. Your forefathers have also realized that swadharma must be done. You should just do it with a detached bhava and just don't be so afraid of the results of it. Just receive with the Ishvara Prasad Buddhi, and you will also achieve me just like your forefathers have done. Hari Om. Thank you.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Chapter 4, verses 16 to 24. Jnana Karma Sanyasa. This is the central theme of this chapter and the Bhagavad Gita. Here, Jnana refers to knowledge that I am the Atma and not the body-mind complex. Karma Sanyasa is the renunciation of doership of karma with the understanding that I am the Akarta Atma. Jnana Karma Sanyasa, therefore, is a leap from the triangular to the binary format. How can we accomplish this leap? We begin by transforming from a karmi to a karma yogi. This is possible by performing karma with samatva buddhi, swadharma buddhi, samarpana buddhi, asanga buddhi, and prasada buddhi. But what is karma? Karma is the activity at the level of the body-mind complex. Dehadi cheshta. It could be kaya, vak, or manaha. Lord Krishna says, Jnatva yat mokshase ashubhat. That means knowing the spiritual significance of karma liberates one from samsara. We start with Atma Anatma Viveka. Through Vedanta Vichara, that is Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana, we learn that we are a mixture of two principles, Atma, the higher I, and Anatma, the lower I or Ahankara. The sword of Viveka cleaves through this confusion between I and my body-mind complex or Ahankara. The pinnacle of spiritual evolution is the paradigm shift to one's identification with the Atma instead of Ahankara. A Jnana Nishta is a person who's fully anchored in Atma. He now claims Aham Sat Chit Ananda Brahma, Aham Satya Sharira Mitya, Aham Nitya Akarta Abhokta. Lord Krishna describes this Jnani as Buddhiman, a realized person, Yukta, a master of his Ahankara, Kritsna Karma Krita, an accomplished person, and a Pandita, that is established in Atma Jnana. An Ajnani, in contrast, identifies with his Ahankara. He dwells in the triangular format and is eternally Karta Bhokta Samsari. Just as Lord Krishna had described Sthita Prajna Lakshanani earlier, he now describes the characteristics of a Pandita. First, Kama Sankalpa Varjita, meaning free from all kinds of futuristic projections of desire. This is very similar to Prajahati Yata Kaman of the Sthita Prajna. His Purnatvam belongs to the Paramartika Satta. Second, Jnana Agni Tadda Karmani. The Jnani's Ahankara-based karma has only a functional existence. Like a roasted seed, it will not germinate into further samsara. Third, Nitya Triptaha Karmani Api Abhi Pravritti. Being Nitya Triptaha or Atmanevatmana Tushta, he does not seek fulfillment in his activities. Fourth, Nirashraya or emotionally independent. Fifth, Karma Phala Sangat Tyaktva. He renounces attachment to results of action. Sixth, Na eva kinchit karoti sa, meaning Karmani akarma ya pashyet. He knows he is a karta. He knows that it is only the ahankara vimudatma, kartaram iti manyate. Next, Tyaktva Sarma Parigraha. A sannyasi jnani renounces possessions, obligations, relationships, and all transactions. Yadricha lava santushta. He is satisfied with any outcome of karma. Ninth, dvandva atita vimatsara. He is beyond competition. Finally, samaha siddha asiddha. He is equanimous in success and failure. Until now, we have learnt Atma Anatma Viveka. Dehi Deha Viveka. I am Atma, everything else is Anatma. But we are still in duality. I the Atma and the world the Anatma. Now, Lord Krishna reveals the next truth, a phenomenal leap from the triangular to the binary format, Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. This entire universe is a projection of me, the Atma, just appearing as a world and body-mind complex. Brahmaiva ahamidam jagatcha sakalam chinmatra vistaritam. This is the essence of the verse. Brahmarpanam brahmahavi, brahmagnam brahmahutam, brahmeva tena gantavyam, brahma karma samadhina. What is meant by brahma karma samadhi? The consciousness principle behind this body-mind complex and all the objects of experience is the same Brahman, like a string behind all seeds. This is the vision of non-duality through duality, Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam. This means the absorption in Brahman, Samadhi, in and through all transactions or karma. This indeed is Jnana Karma Sanyasa. Thank you.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. The set of 9 verses in chapter 4, 25 to 34, deals with several spiritual sadhanas in the spiritual path leading to Aham Brahmasmi, that is, I am that Brahman as enumerated by Lord Krishna. These disciplines are dedicated to the Lord to purify the mind for spiritual growth. This attitudinal change in all the spiritual practices is referred to as yajna in this context. The original form of Vedic rituals, that is, the sacred fire and offering made into the fire, is used as analogy by Krishna to glorify these spiritual practices. In the next slide, the 12 yajnas to be practiced as taught by Lord Krishna to Arjuna can be classified into two types: Jnana Yajna or Brahma Yajna and Karma Yajna. The Karma Yajna can only purify the mind, giving us the eligibility for Jnana Yajna to attain liberation. In the next slide, looking at the first Yajna, that is Brahma Yajna. This is the highest form of spiritual practice, where one's individual self, the lower I, or the body-mind complex, is being offered to the fire of Brahman or the higher self. What this means is nothing other than self-realization, where we realize I am not the limited body-mind complex, but I am the infinite existence consciousness bliss. In the next slide, Krishna describes various karma yajnas. One of them is yajna at the level of senses. It consists of dhamma yajna and vishaya bhoga yajna. Dhamma yajna is nothing but sensory discipline, indriya samyama, the sense of hearing, smelling, tasting, and so on. In other words, the eagerness of senses reaching out for the objects which is being controlled is offered into the fire of sense control, resulting in disciplined, mastered sense organs. In Vishaya Bhoga Yajna, sense organs themselves are the fire into which we offer varieties of sensory stimuli from sense objects. For example, offering varieties of taste to the tongue, offering varieties of forms and colors to the eyes, and so on, is Vishaya Bhoga Yajna. Experiencing the sense pleasures legitimately and morally while keeping them under our control is the main essence of this yajna. In the next slide, Krishna talks about yajna at the level of mind. In spite of sensory control, thoughts related to worldly activities continue to exist in the mind. Krishna explains Atma Samyama Yajna, means mind discipline or Sama Yajna, where you give up the internal desire itself for the worldly activities. This is a tougher and subtle form of control as it involves being alert, aware, and monitoring of the thoughts using proper discrimination all the time. Mind discipline involves disciplining of Sarvan Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani, five sense organs of knowledge and five organs of action. All kinds of activities of the sense organs in the form of thoughts entering the mind are to be disciplined with proper judgment. That is, unruly sense organs are offered into the fire of mind discipline, which means they are destroyed and converted to disciplined sense organs. In the next slide, Krishna also talks about few more important yagnas like Daiva Yajna, where rituals are performed to the Vedic gods, Dravya Yajna, that is Dana Yajna, where different kinds of charities in terms of money, material, knowledge sharing, kind words, goodwill is offered. Danam helps in maintaining universal harmony, followed by Tapa Yajna, that is, by willful self-denial, we establish mastery over the sense organs. We deliberately say no to whatever we regularly do without any pain and complaint. Tapa or vow taken for Vratams, Shivratri fasting, are the typical examples of the Tapa Yajna. Next is Yoga Yajna. Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga meditation is offered to the fire of devotion to the Lord to discipline different layers of human personality. Svadhyaya Yajna is Parayanam, that is chanting or recitation and memorization of the scriptures, including shlokas. Knowing the meaning of the scriptures is referred to as Jnana Yajna in this context. In the next slide, Krishna talks about pranayama sadhana as yagna. Pranamaya kosha, or the energy layer of human personality, is disciplined by pranayama. The energy layer, that is prana, influences the disciplining of both body and the mind, hence aids in purifying the mind. Krishna explains pranayama as a spiritual practice that involves awareness of inhalation, exhalation, and retention. Pranayama sadhana gives calm and quiet mind that helps in spiritual growth. In the next slide, the last yagna Krishna talks about is ahara niyama yagna, which involves practice of food discipline, where the unhealthy panchapranas are destroyed by offering into the fire of healthy panchapranas, resulting in good digestive system, circulatory system, so on. Krishna says, Sarvam Akhilam Karma, which means all the karmas, without exception, will find their fulfillment only in Jnana Yajna. Karma Yajnas are incomplete without Jnana Yajna, and Jnana Yajna is impossible without going through Karma Yajna. In the next slide, having talked about various yajnas to attain self-knowledge, Krishna teaches Arjuna the path or the way to attain the highest knowledge. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Krishna says, realize that highest knowledge by expressing your humility, by doing namaskara to your guru, with intense desire to inquire on the knowledge, by service to the guru to establish mutual understanding. This guru, who is Tattvadarshinaha, that is Shrotriya Brahmanishta, the one who knows the Shastras, capable of communicating the knowledge and is firmly anchored in Brahman, will impart that highest absolute truth, the self-knowledge, which involves the systematic study of Vedanta. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Having spoken about Jnana sadhanas in the form of 12 yagnas, the glorification and the means of knowledge, Krishna now in the following 3 verses gives 4 Jnana phalams. So what is the benefit of gaining this knowledge? He mentions 2 benefits in the 35th verse itself. He says in the first line, Yat Jnatva, by gaining this knowledge, Moham na yashyasi, you will never get into delusion anymore. One of the biggest problems in life is conflicting emotions, leading to delusion, and Arjuna himself surrendered to Krishna because of this problem. Our inability to face the future because of emotional attachment is the cause of conflicts and delusions. And therefore, what do? We postpone our decisions. But how long can we postpone? But once I have got self-knowledge, I get the strength to make decisions and be ready to face the future, whatever the outcome. That's the first benefit Krishna promises is Moha Nashaha. Then in the second line, he mentions the second benefit. He says, you will have Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Darshanam. This he conveys indirectly. He says, after this knowledge, Bhutani Mai Drakshasi, you will see all beings in me. And then he adds that not only you will see the whole world in God, you will also see the whole world is in you. Atmani Pashyasi. So what do we derive from these 2 statements? Whole world is in God and whole world is in you. It can only mean Jivatma and Paramatma are essentially the same. It is exactly like the wave and the ocean having different names and forms, but essentially they are one and the same water. Thus, Jivatma and Paramatma Aikyam is the Jnana Param here. In the next verse, Krishna says another benefit of self-knowledge is the destruction of all your papams, sarva papa nashaha. He uses a metaphor here by comparing papam to a huge ocean, whereas jnanam is like a boat which will help you cross over this ocean of sin. Therefore, he says, Hey Arjuna, api chet sarva bhya papebhya papa krittamaha. Even if you are the worst sinner, you can still cross over all the papams. How? Through the boat of knowledge, jnana plavena eva. Therefore, the jnanam is the best remedy and the only remedy for papanashaha. In the 37th verse, Krishna uses another metaphor to mention the fourth Jnana Phalam, which is Sarva Karma Nasha. He says, O Arjuna, the fire of knowledge reduces all karmas to ashes, just as a well-kindled fire reduces the fuel to ashes. Now, in the previous verse, Krishna says Sarva Papa Nashaha, and here he says Sarva Karma Nashaha. So what is the difference between them? Because Papam is also karma. It is nothing but our past karma reflecting as a present Papam. So here in this verse, Krishna wants to say that not only Papa karmas, but even Punya karmas are destroyed. According to Vedanta, Papam gives immediate sorrow, Punyam gives later sorrow. Therefore, Punyam is also a bondage. And Punya and Papa karma can be Sanchita, Agami, and Prarabdha karmas, which are responsible for the Punarapi Janma and Punarapi Maranam cycle. Therefore, Krishna says, through Jnanam, all the Sanchitam is destroyed, Agami is avoided, and Prarabdham is not destroyed, but Jnanam insulates the Jnani from it. Krishna conveys this idea by comparing knowledge to a huge conflagration of fire, Jnana Agnihi, and all the karmas are compared to fuel like wood. So when the fire is very big, any type of wood put into this huge fire burns to ashes. Similarly, all the karmas are burned down to ashes by Jnana Agni. But what is important, he says, Samidha Agni, the fire should be well kindled. Similarly, when we listen to Vedanta for a few months, we get some knowledge, but that knowledge is only a small claim. We have to further fan it and stabilize it through Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana until the knowledge becomes clear and all doubts are clarified. Only then the fire of knowledge, Jnana Agni, becomes well kindled and reduces all the karmas to ashes. Now, how does Jnanam burn all the karmas? We know karmas or actions take place because of consciousness, but consciousness does not act. The inert body mind does not act. Then who does the action? It is the ego that does the actions. That ego which is born out of ignorance, and that ignorance is destroyed through knowledge. It is the ego who owns this karma. So when the ego is destroyed in the fire of knowledge, then your ownership over the karmas go away. This is what Krishna meant when he says, Jnana Agni destroys all your karmas. It destroys the ownership over your karmas. In conclusion, the four benefits that Krishna promises one can get through attaining Jnanam is Mohanashaha, Sarva Papa Nashaha, Sarva Karma Nashaha, and Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Darshanam. So, a Jnani is without delusion, has no papa, no sense of doership, and revels in the knowledge, Aham Brahma Asmi. Thank you. Hari Om.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I'll be covering the verses 38 to 42, which are the concluding verses of chapter 4. In the concluding verses, Lord Krishna talks about qualifications and disqualifications with regards to self-knowledge. They are also known as sadhanas. They are known as the do's and don'ts of gaining self-knowledge. Knowledge is the greatest purifier in the creation. Why? Because it can remove the original sin. That is ajnana or ignorance. But only a qualified person who has prepared himself for the knowledge seed to sprout into the moksha tree, to give the ananda phalam, that is the permanent peace of mind, can benefit from this. In the following picture, we see that the mind has to be prepared before the knowledge seed is sown. Next slide, sir. This person has to prepare his mind. Such a person with a prepared mind is called the Samsiddhi Purushaha. In order for him to prepare his mind, he has to go through certain practices called sadhana chatushtaya, which has 4 practices, that is viveka, vairagya, shat sampatti, and mumukshatva. Shat sampatti is called so because it has 6 disciplines: shama, dama, uparama, titiksha, and samadhana. Once a person is well versed with these practices, he moves on to follow the path of karma yoga and upasana yoga. So can we kindly go to the previous slide? Now the mind is ready and fully fertilized to receive the seed of knowledge, and this seed of knowledge sprouts into the moksha tree or the tree of liberation. And from this tree, we receive the fruit, which is called the Ananda Phalam, which gives us permanent peace of mind. Next slide, sir. Next slide, sir. The do's to be nourished, inculcated, and imbibed by the mind to obtain jnanam are, firstly, yoga samsiddha, purified mind, which we have already discussed just now. The second one is shraddha, that is faith in the validity of scriptures and the guru. The third point is tatparaha, that is sincerity and commitment towards the goal. And the fourth one is called samyatendriya, which is mastery over self, that is sensory discipline and focusing capacity towards the goal. And these are only possible if our mind, our behavior, and our habits change. Next slide, sir. The don'ts to be handled in the mind, which are obstacles to jnanam, are, firstly, ignorance or ajnanam, which is lack of knowledge. Secondly, ashraddha, lack of faith in scriptures. And thirdly, the biggest factor is samshaya, that is the doubting tendency, which is the most important one to tackle. The word yoga in this context is a sum of sadhana and phalam. A person gets detached from all actions. Next slide, sir. Because actions belong to the body-mind complex. We need to renounce this karma identification. Next slide, sir. To gain this path, we need to follow practices in the following stages. Stage 1 is shravanam, that is listening to the knowledge of jnanam, that is I am Atma, which is akarta. Secondly, the stage of mananam, where negation of all doubts about jnanam by conviction is done. And the third and the final stage is the stage of nididhyasanam, which refers to a person who's alert to avoid forgetfulness of this teaching about jnanam. For such a person, karma is non-binding. Next slide, sir. So, follow karma yoga, purify your mind, and follow jnana yoga and enlighten your mind and be free. In this last verse, Lord Krishna says, your worst enemy is doubt. Get rid of it. All doubts can only be removed by Shishya. A doubtful person cannot have happiness in this world or the other. Next slide, sir. In this slide, we see this word of knowledge, which should be used to destroy or remove the doubt regarding karma yoga sadhana or the jnana yoga sadhana. Therefore, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, take the appropriate path, karma yoga, not jnana yoga. Follow grihastha ashrama now, not sannyasa ashrama. This is not the time. Next slide, sir. O Arjuna, do your duty. Rise and get up. Take your bow and fight the war. Next slide, sir. So in summary, the do's are having a purified mind, that is a samsiddha purushaha, having shraddha and faith in the teachings, sincerity and commitment to goal, and mastery over self. And the don'ts are lack of faith or ashraddha, ignorance or ajnana, and samshaya or doubt regarding the scriptures. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Rupa, for a very convincing conclusion of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita with very strong do's and don'ts. Thanks to all the previous speakers for all your efforts to so nicely summarize the wonderful, transforming 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita in very clearly illustrated slides with a very crisp message. Finally, what do we have? Atishto Tishta Bharata. Krishna is not giving us a chance. He is giving us a command. Just do it. With that, we conclude the most beautiful 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. As we had done at the conclusion of the 3rd chapter, before we came into the 4th chapter, we had Manisha Panchakam. So too, we thought in between chapters, we will have a different topic. So the next class, we will be studying an important Dhyana Shloka and the first 4 verses of Sri Dakshinamurti Stotra. This is considered an advanced Vedantic Prakarana Grantha. Although it is a stotra in praise of Lord Dakshinamurti, it has the essence of all Vedanta in a very cryptic and in a very packed manner. Swamiji called them atom bomb verses, and that is why we are informing you in advance for all sincere students to prepare the first 4 verses of the Sri Dakshinamurti Stotra and the Dhyana Shlokas. We will conclude today's class with the chanting of Pratasmarami, which is another very beautiful summary of all Vedanta. Over to you, Madhusudan.
Gurubhyo Namaha. Pratasmarana Stotraha. Pratasmarami hrudi samspuradatma tattvam Satchit sukham paramaham sagatim turiyam Yat swapna jagar sushuktim avaiti nityam Tad brahma nishkalamaham nacha bhuta sangaha Pratar bhajami banasa vachasamagamyam Vacho vibhanti nikhila yadanu grahena Yanneti neti vachanair nigapocham Tam deva deva madaba chuta mahurargham Pratar nabami tamasa paramarkavarnam Purnam sanatana padam purushottamakhyan Yasmin nidam jagadasheshamasheshamurto Rajvam bhujangamayiva pratibhasitam vai Shlokatrayamitam punyam Lokatraya vibhushanam Pratah kale pathen nityam Sagachet paramam padam Sagachet paramam padam.
Thanks to Sri Madhusudan and all the speakers. Work stress is a common experience of many, and the answer to this epidemic is Jnana Karma Sanyasa, is what we can conclude after listening to the masterly presentations of the evening. Uttishta Bharata is the command the Lord gives to all of us. Apply the balm of jnana and insulate yourself were the opening remarks by Dr. Netra, the greatness, the timelessness of Gita Parampara, and the relevance of Gita Jnana Ganga even today, the two types of sannyasa, the nature of avatara, and importantly, that Gita is an uttamam rahasyam. The answer to our problems is within, still we look outside, and this is the rahasya. Gita teaches us to look within and take responsibility. Ullas mentioned, Yo veti tattvataha. Whether you realize self or God, it is the same. It is the wave, realizing it is water only. Stages to and preparations thereon were explained and detailed. Ask and you shall receive, a common phrase we hear everywhere. What we ask and how difficult is the path to Jnana Yoga was explained very well with the examples of the preparation to the Olympic Games. Be detached from actions and fruits of action, and with that attitude, do your swadharma. Dr. Anupama told us about the Kaya Vak Mano Karma, the differences in the understanding of Ajnani and Ajnani about Atma Swarupa. Karmanyah karmayah pashyet. In action, in action. I repeat, in action is the central of this chapter, and we have heard eloquently every speaker talking about it. Brahmarpanam Brahma, very famous comes here. There is no material world apart from consciousness. The conclusion this helps us draw. Mamata took us through the 12 yagnas, the spiritual practices of two types, Jnana and Karma Yagna, that helps one improve self-control. And the two are mutually dependent on Karma Yagna. When Yagna is performed as a ritual, it becomes easier and has a framework. A disciplined mind helps self-control, and that is the key to progress in the spiritual path. Tadvidya pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, with service to Guru and the attitude to seek knowledge, we do all the karmas and get the knowledge. Chaitanya spoke about the phalam, the four jnana phalam of these yagnas: mohanasha, bhutani mai drakshasi, the whole world, jivatma, paramatma, sarva papa nashaha. I remember Gopala Krishna Adiga, very famous poet, who brings out the metaphor, Aluva kadalalu teli barutalide nageya hai doni. So Jnana is the boat which takes us through the ocean of dukkha, the samsara. Sarva karma, no punya, no papa. Like the way a small spark brings in forest fire when the twigs are dry. Similarly, when Jnanagni is kindled, Rupa explained Jnanena Sadrusham, and Jnana or Anandapalam is possible with Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti, complete Shraddha, Samyati Indriyaha, and when there is no Samshaya and Ajnana. So much to take back. We did the Shravanam and Mananam. Now is the time for Nididhyasanam in this auspicious Shravana Masa. Thank you, friends, for joining us. And thanks to all the speakers. We shall meet again on the 13th August for the next Dakshinamurti Stotra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste.